the ability that we have to tell our own stories, to record ourselves, should lead to a layer or a level of immortality. But instead, we're filming our cats. We're being entertained by cat videos. It's like, okay, there's poison everywhere. But there's one little spot, called Reelblack TV on YouTube where you can find the antidote.
You are now part of a social experiment.
See now where my limit is. Only got no.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today on the journey towards self-mastery. Our next guest is an award-winning filmmaker, curator, YouTuber, and media host from Philadelphia. He studied film at NYU. He's worked diligently to offer spaces and support to independent Black filmmakers. He's a former intern from The Cosby Show. He's produced a number of short films, including the documentary Who is Chris Rock? Through his platform, Reelblack, he has interviewed Ava DuVernay, Spike Lee, Janelle Monáe, Issa Rae, Patrice O'Neal, Byron Allen, Monique, Jasmine Sullivan, and Dick Gregory, just to name a few. His YouTube channel, Reelblack, offers a look into the past through Black films, movies, documentaries, television broadcasts, as well as many lectures and speeches from some of the greatest Black minds like Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Dick Gregory, Huey P. Newton, Joanja Kunjufu, Fannie Lou Hamer, and the list goes on and on. His goal is to educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower Black people through film. Let's welcome today Mr. Mike D to the program.
Hey, Mr. G, how's it going? How are you this evening?
I'm well, man. I'm well. Definitely an honor to have you
I really
on the
appreciate
program.
the intro. Wow. Okay, that's what we do. That's what we do for sure. It's sometimes we're in our 20th season. I mean, it would be the 20th year that I've been making films full time in Philadelphia, and so it's a very appropriate that we're talking about all this stuff and having it's great for me to be able to look back and think about all the different things that we've been able to accomplish over these past few years. So thank you.
Man, you have quite the amount of work and the people that you've worked with and just everything, man. You have just a legacy of greatness, man, that you've covered, you've been a part of. So definitely appreciate you coming on the program, man.
My pleasure. But thank you for having me. Yes.
Yes, sir. I'm going to start off with, a little something that kind of made me chuckle when I was watching your interview with Dick Gregory, and you were asking him about Black film, and he was like, Black film, what are you talking about? Like, kind of thing. And, and it's something that kind of made me think for a second, really, because, what exactly is Black film? Black film is something that you cover a lot, but a lot of times we don't really identify it. Are we talking about Black Panther? Is that a Black film? Are we talking about Django? Is that a Black film? Because Black Panther, Django, these movies don't come generally from Black people. Even though Black people are in them, they don't come from Black people. So what does it take to be a Black film in your view? Is it a Black director, somebody who's Black making it? Is it a Black cast? Is it Black, everything all Black in it? Like, what exactly
good question.
are we talking
I think
about?
authorship is very important. Like who are the people responsible for telling the story in terms of the director, the producer, what have you. There is a difference between a Black film and a film with Black people in it, and I think that's what Bob Dick was talking about it in that interview. But he also, the Blackest film that he has ever seen was made by a non-Black person, which was Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino's film. And the reason he said that was because it demonstrated a lot of things a Black author would not be able to get away with within the current system, like showing white people being attacked, by bullwhips, by a Black protagonist, and burning down the plantation, and so many other things that were, for the most part, you saw it in the 70s in the Blaxploitation movies, but those were specialized films that were made for specific audiences. But as far as what Quentin Tarantino got away with in a mainstream movie that made hundreds of millions of dollars is still unprecedented. But I do give a shout out to Ryan Coogler with Black Panther that made over $1 billion worldwide. And, the Killmonger character was very pro-Black. Now, what they had to do in terms of compromising his message, working with the CIA and all those kind of things, still ring of what we like to call tricknology. They'll allow certain things to sneak into the stories, but there has to be some level of compromise, and that's where the tricks come in. So, we're still waiting patiently to see the real pro-Black movies in this current wave. It just seems like there's a bigger push for diversity than there is for pro-Blackness. And, so, we exist in YouTube, we exist in the independent realm, and we're trying to break into some mainstream opportunities, to get some narrative films together. But what primarily my definition of Black film is similar to Warrington Hudlin of the Black Filmmaker Foundation. And he says if it's a Black producer, Black director, then there's Black authorship. It's a Black film, But there's a big gap between what we get to make and what they get to make. Is still a big gap, and I'm not trying to throw shade to anybody. I mean, there's literally hundreds of movies now that represent Black people, and I know that there are tons of people that are doing the work necessary to tell authentic stories. But I still find it we've got a ways to go. For me to feel like I have the same catharsis watching a film that a typical white audience member gets from, say, a Tom Cruise production. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, what you just said about Quentin Tarantino being able to cover that everything in Django kind of reminded me of Birth of a Nation. Not the original, but the second one.
Oh yeah, that got shut down.
And yeah, like it was something that historically accurate and everything, and it was just too much for people. Like it got shut down real quick.
Yeah. Birth of a Nation, Nate Parker's movie from, I guess, 2014 now, or 2015, something like that. Yeah, that definitely represents the kind of vision that I'm talking about. Why that movie got shut down is political, and it's people can do the research on that, but yeah, in a perfect world, people would not feel offended by someone who's attempting to tell the truth, and unfortunately we have to almost apologize for being Black sometimes when we want to tell our own stories. So, and that's somewhat disappointing, and now we're in award season. I'm not necessarily arguing that this is a very strong awards year, because I think film is in transition right now as far as what we get to see, between what a theatrical release is, what a TV release is, what a Netflix or a streaming release looks like. I think Hollywood's still trying to figure out what's the future of film, really. And you can't necessarily compare, like I don't know what the classic film is going to be, that was made in 2022, 2023, 2024. It remains to be seen, but I've yet to see it in this crop. But it definitely, when they announced the awards nominees, and it's happened the last few years, there's still a level of selfishness when it comes to what Black films get recognized and what the mainstream chooses to nominate when it comes to awards. So, I would have loved to have seen Danielle Deadwyler get a nomination for Till. And certainly Viola Davis is in the league where she should get nominations almost every year. So why those particular things didn't happen? It speaks to politics. It speaks to the nature of the makeup of the Academy still to this day, even though they've made some inroads. It's still the same thing, and the right people need to fight for, which is equity. If you're talking about, for the record, what the best films were for the year, but then you're wholesale not even considering certain movies just because of political reasons, even though they've proven themselves in through critics and through box office to be worthwhile choices, that becomes problematic to me, So that's something that needs to be looked at and examined and corrected.
Yeah, I definitely want to dig into that a little further, but I know first before we
Sure,
get
I know you got a ton
into
of
all that.
questions, so I'll try and keep my answers short. But you got me on a roll. You got me on something I'm kind of passionate about, So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As you should be, man. And we'll make it smooth for you and everything. So I really want the audience to kind of get an idea of who you are and not to take you for granted. You know what I'm saying? So can you shed some light on us, just your experience into film, not just black film, but just film within itself, and how you grew this passion? Were you that kid that was watching TV all day, all night, just observing everything and analyzing everything? And like, what was your childhood like growing up, man? Was it just
yeah, I'm an only child, but I grew up with my cousin, and my cousin loved sci-fi, and I love comedy, and from a very early age, I could watch a movie on TV because they had what they had back then was the Leonard Maltin Guide, which was like a book that basically gave capsule reviews of all the movies that would come on TV that were in television syndication. So between that and having the TV Week supplement that would come in the newspaper, at a very early age, I'd say like 11 or 12 years old, I could look at basically any movie that would come on TV, for like maybe 30 seconds and be able to guess within a year when it was produced, just based on the fact if it was in color, black and white, the production design, just the look and feel of the film. I could guess what year it was, and I was like 12 years old, 12. I mean, I think I might have been the only kid, definitely the only black kid on the planet who had a subscription to both Time Magazine and American Film and Mad Magazine. Those were my go-to every month things that I would digest. So I was a bit
was
of
it
a
a specific
savant.
film? Was it a specific film that kind of captivated your interest in film, like growing up, or was
Really, I mean, I guess at when I was in high school or junior high, John Landis was really big. I don't know if you know this guy's name, but he did National Lampoon's Animal House. He had a tremendous run of comedy. He literally changed the face of film comedy back in the late '70s, early '80s. So he's responsible for Trading Places, American Werewolf in London. He directed National Lampoon's Animal House and the Blues Brothers and Coming to America. And he was one of the few people that was working. He worked with Eddie Murphy, so he was making films with black people, and they were really funny. And so that was an early touchstone. And then in high school, I had a chance. I wish I could find this tape, but somewhere. I think it's somewhere. But I had a chance to interview John Hughes for my school newspaper. It was part of a junket interview thing. But and everybody who grew up at a certain time was lured in by John Hughes movies, Pretty in Pink, Some Kind of Wonderful, 16 Candles, Weird Science. They had the combination of having great soundtracks, and they were very entertaining films that were aimed at teen audiences. So before and people have to realize that prior to She's Gotta Have It and Hollywood Shuffle, there weren't very many black films being made. Those films were made independent of the studio system. But in the mid '80s, when I was going to high school and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, the only time you got to see black people was on television. Like on Give Me a Break or Different Strokes or Webster or something like that, or old reruns of Sanford and Son and the Jeffersons and stuff like that. But they weren't making movies about black folks back in the '80s. Maybe once a year you get a Soldier Story or Color Purple. So my early aspirations were to be the next John Landis, the next John Hughes. It wasn't until I saw She's Gotta Have It that I said, well, maybe there's a chance I could be the next Spike Lee. Now, at my age, I'm turning into the Satchel Paige of independent film. I've been playing the longest, but I might be the last one to join the league, or get invited into the league. So that's what I'm operating from now is just to get a feature done before I'm done. Before they put me in the ground, I want to have a narrative feature film that people can look at and say, hey, or several. I'm not going to limit myself, but I'm trying to get into that game of doing independent Black film that's a little more mainstream than YouTube. So I hope that answers your question. But maybe Trading Places or Come to America might have been touchstones. And then by the time I got to college, NYU, the freshman year was when House Party came out, and that's when I discovered the Black Filmmaker Foundation, and I became an intern over there and learned the insides of the history. The people that came before Spike Lee and the people that were struggling to have a voice around the same time. There was so much burgeoning talent, but it wasn't really being given great opportunity, until the breakthrough of John Singleton, let's say, and that famous New York Times Magazine cover story, They Gotta Have Us, which was, had all the predominant Black independent filmmakers of the time on the cover, Matty Rich and Spike and John Singleton and Mary Van Peebles and Charles Lane and the Hudlins. So, and
Go ahead. So at NYU, you got a chance to do a documentary film on Chris Rock.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. My sophomore year, I guess it was 1989. A friend of mine by the name of Judah Friedlander, who has gone on. He was on 30 Rock. He's gone on to become a very successful stand-up comedian. He asked me if I wanted to go to the comic strip with him because he was going to try out there to see if he can get on stage. So we went, and the very first person, when we got up there, I said, well, of course I'll go because I'm a big Eddie Murphy fan, and the back cover of his first album, there's a picture of him performing at the comic strip. And I used to collect, I still do in a way, collect comedy albums and different things like that. I'm a huge comedy fan. So, of course, I wanted to go. And the very first person I saw when I walked in the door was Chris Rock. And this brother was around the same age as me, And I'd just seen him earlier that summer on the Joan Rivers show. And I might have been the only person that would recognize him in public. But I said, hey, you're Chris Rock. He said, yeah. And I said, I'm doing a class on making the documentary. And we're halfway through. Could I make a film about you? And he was like, yeah, bet. So he wrote down his info. And a week later, we were in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn at his family's house, interviewing him, plastic slip covers on the couch, and he's just on the verge of stardom, not the superstardom that he would ultimately find after he did Bring the Pain, but just on that first wave of stardom. And after he did I'm Gonna Get You Sucker and Beverly Hills Cop 2 and appeared on the Uptown Comedy Express. So it's the earliest documentary. It's not being known. It's the earliest documentary on Chris, and I'm proud to say, we're still in contact. I still consider him a good friend. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Do you find that much has changed since that time
for him or for me?
well, for him, like as a comedian, I know he didn't blow up until after that. But
he's always been insightful. I mean, I've caught his new tour, and I'll be at the taping. I'm sure a lot of people, by the time they see this, they will have seen his new special, and they can attest for themselves. But I mean, he's always been insightful, and he's always had the hot take, the smart way of thinking about issues that affect us all, And he had that when he was 22, 23 years old, and he still does have it, in his late 50s, So, he's a mastermind. He deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of stand-up comedy. And, I'm proud to, be associated in some small way with his legacy, So, yeah.
Absolutely. Gotcha. All right. So that's in college, man. So I remember you mentioned in a previous interview, your teacher kind of gave you like a B minus, a B or something
Oh yeah,
for that
yeah.
assignment.
Well, I mean, maybe rightly so. I mean, I was trying to make it more like a puff piece, like an electronic press kit, something that he could use to promote himself. And the teacher was like, "No, one, you're lacking movement. It's all talking heads, and you're not really asking him tough questions." And that I felt was unfair because we were playing a part two, which we never got to make. Maybe one day we'll make a part two. I don't know. But I was able to remedy a lot of those criticisms when I did a movie 20 years later called Ladies and Gentlemen, Jordan Rock, which is about his younger brother, Jordan, who was embarking on a stand up career at age 23. He was basically the same age Chris was when I met him. I met Jordan, his brother, and we made another film. It was a longer piece, and I think we killed it on that one. So.
I haven't seen that one. I gotta check that
It's
one out and scroll through
I
the
believe it's
archives.
on. I hope it's on Reelblack 2 and not Reelblack 1. And yeah, I'd love for you to check it out. Yes, anyone watching.
Absolutely. All right. So just coming out of college, man, like what was your mindset in regards to film and what you wanted to
Oh, I just wanted
do?
to eat.
And
I starved coming out of school. I mean, I had contacts, and I mean, it's such a game. Just coming out of school, they convince. It's such a game. They, and I hate to speak badly about film school, but basically, I would say for the most part, film school doesn't do anything for you except maybe give you access to equipment and the ability to network with other people, like-minded people. Film schools, the ones that are the top film schools, are successful because they're able to recruit talented people like myself, but they wait until you have success before, and then they capitalize on your success to use that to recruit other people. So coming out of film school was tough because like you have to imagine, coming out of NYU, let's say there are 100 kids, they're all vying for the same jobs, and then you're competing against the same 100 kids that were trying to make moves before then. Now, NYU grad program has gotten a little bit better in the sense that they kind of set it up in a way that your goal is to make a feature film upon graduation. You should have a feature film done if you're going to the graduate program. But at the time, film was very expensive, and the people that were having the most success were making calling card films, like 30-minute short films that they used as their calling card to Hollywood to show that they knew how to direct or write. Somebody like a Night Shyamalan trumped that by making a feature film upon graduation. As soon as he graduated, he was off to India to make this movie, Praying with Anger, which, the Weinstein saw and invited him to make a film for Miramax, which he didn't necessarily enjoy the process, but it helped to solidify the early days of his career. Me coming out of film school, I had a 10-minute short, and everything that I knew how to do, I did in that 10-minute short film called The Hardest Part, which is on YouTube.
I've seen that
Okay,
one.
yeah. So that was the best I could do. And they weren't necessarily looking for me, to do an after school special, or even though it's kind of written like one, they weren't necessarily like looking for me. And I felt like I needed to learn more. So what ended up happening, and this is the grace of God, I believe, was back to American Film Magazine, I was trying to get a grant from the American Film Institute, and I applied one year, I didn't get it. I applied the next year, and I had the film finished by then. Hardest part. And they said, "We like your film. We've already given the grant to somebody else, but if you apply to the film school, there's a very good chance you'll get in with this piece of work." Right? So I said, "Oh, bet." That was all I needed to hear that time, because I never wanted to go to LA without an invitation. Like I just was, I'm an East Coast kid, very sheltered, and I didn't necessarily want to take the risk on my own to go to all the way across the country. It seemed like such a far distance at the time. So this was my invite, and I got into the American Film Institute Center for Advanced Film and Television Studies as a directing fellow, and it was one of the best experiences that I could have had, because it really taught me what undergraduate film program did not teach me, which was how things are actually done in real life. What set protocol is about, what the different roles and responsibilities of the different departments are. And I got to work with, not to say that the actors I worked with in NYU weren't on the same level, but we worked with SAG contracts, and we had Screen Actors Guild actors working with us. So, and then also, it was like a pressure cooker, because there were a lot of other people. Most noteworthy in my class would be Kimberly Elise. She was a directing fellow before she became an actress, that were all vying for the same types of opportunities, and that went well until I ran out of money. And midnight train to Georgia, midnight train to Philly, or midnight red-eyed back to Philly. And
Just for some context, you say you ran out of money. Like, how much are we talking that it takes to be producing films, or at the time that you were doing
well,
it?
I mean, I'd taken the maximum loan to just be able to travel and survive for the time that I went to, which is $12,000. So $1,000 a month, and then they give you a little bit of something, and then the second year you can work, but you go from, having your bills kind of covered through Pell Grant, student loan kind of thing, to not having any of that money coming in, and then all of a sudden that job at the video store just ain't hacking, it's not doing enough, and then your roommate decides that he wants to move out, and now you got to then you realize, okay, well, this place that was convenient, that's walking distance to the school, is actually in a crappy neighborhood that nobody else wants to live in. So, unless you can find another film student, now it's summertime, to live with you, you're going to be out of luck. And most people don't want to live in that neighborhood because they have cars and they have choice. They want to experience California. So it kind of left me hanging, and so as soon as the lease was done, I was out of there, and I was back in Philly, sleeping on my grandmother's couch, trying to write a screenplay. And, it took a year to finish the screenplay, and then nobody would read it. So that became a big problem. But at the same time, around a year later, on 97, a movie called Beloved comes to Philadelphia, and they're looking for somebody like me to work on the crew. So, I got in on that. I got, an impeccable resume, Mr. G. They could not deny me at that time the opportunity to run and get coffee for people, and I got to work with Jonathan Demme and Oprah Winfrey, and that was a great experience, and a very validating experience. Kimberly Elise was there as an actress now on the set, and it just felt like family. But the next movie that was going to come into Philadelphia was Sixth Sense, which Night Shyamalan was directing, and Night is a year behind me at NYU. And I said, well, I don't want a PA on a movie that this guy I went to school with is writing and directing. I don't, that's far beneath me, I'm going to take the money that I have saved, and I'm just going to use it to create the next opportunity for myself. So, but I was invited because I had friends that worked on Sixth Sense. I was invited to the cast and crew screening. So I got a chance to see this movie like 2 weeks before it opened to the general public. And he said, like this movie's testing through the roof. I think it's going to change history. And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then, it did, and what I liked about the movie when I saw it without any outside judgment, it wasn't necessarily the twist ending, it was just the beauty that he brought to Philadelphia and captured from Philadelphia. And I said, well, wow, like if he can do that, like make movies in his hometown, and the nature of the beast is changing, I could probably do that. So it was really literally at that moment after seeing Sixth Sense, I made the commitment to stay in Philadelphia, not make any effort to go back to New York or make any effort to go to LA. I was just going to stay in Philly and do my thing. And that's been a gift and a curse. I think the industry ebbs and flows, and unfortunately, it's not always kind to independence. The way that things operate. But I've had my lucky moments, and YouTube and meeting Baba Dick was one of them. That was another touchstone, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate your honesty, by the way, too, man. Could have easily just hit us up with the highlight reel, like, yeah, I've worked with who, so and so and so and so.
well,
That's
you asked
interesting.
about the struggle. I mean, it's not always easy. I mean, and everybody has their path. I'm not saying mine was any better or worse than anybody else's. Like I went to a seminar, and Knight was talking about how he was under pressure sleeping on it wasn't his grandmother's couch, but it was his family's guest room. But he was married. He was about to get married. Or he was married, and he had to spend like a year woodshedding, getting Sixth Sense together, because and the pressure was on because he had already had some opportunities, and like the opportunities he had, he was facing like just being a failure the rest of his life. So he had to make that work. Sixth Sense had to be exactly what it became, because he was under that pressure of, wow, and Chris, the same thing. Chris Rock, the same thing. He'd been on Saturday Night Live, and he got fired or he quit or whatever happened. I'm not sure of the details, but he wasn't on that show anymore. And the bills were mounting, and he's still in the same neighborhood, like why are you still there? He's supposed to be famous, So that kind of pressure creates a bring the pain, So, for me, it's not that I take the road of least resistance, but I don't handle rejection very well. I can't keep putting myself up against no's all the time, especially at a time when they weren't really looking for people like me. So, at a certain point after doing Beloved, this is like around 1999, 2000, a friend of mine says like, look, there's this new stuff out, digital video, for $10,000, you can put yourself in the game. You can buy a camera and get a Mac computer. I wish I'd kept that computer, but Mac Tower G4 computer, and you can be making the same quality videos that you're editing at KYW TV. So that's all I need to hear. I could just go directly from my idea in my head to making something that people get to see. In the first 2 years, now we're talking about the 20th anniversary, 2002, 2003, I made 5 movies in a row. They all played festivals. They all won awards. And that was basically the beginning of Reelblack as an entity in Philadelphia.
Let's talk about that.
Sure.
Reelblack, REEL, Black.
Mm-hmm.
What inspired Reelblack, and then how did you transition from the Reelblack productions into your YouTube channel?
Well, it kind of in a way by accident the name came. You know, I was at one point I said it would be great if there was a magazine online that chronicled Black cinema, Black independent film, because I've been going to Urban World Film Festival for, since its inception. Basically, I'd go to New York every September and check out the Urban World Film Festival, and I knew there were a lot of movies and a lot of talent that wasn't being covered. And so I bought the domain name first. I said this could be a magazine one day online. But I'm not gonna say I'm lazy, but I'm not directed towards, like, you know yeah, I'm not on Benny's. I'm not Hugh Hefner, sitting up all night writing a bunch of articles. So that didn't come to pass. But what did, after I made a couple movies here in Philadelphia, Philly Boy and Jazzy Fat Nasty's in Process, I was invited by a woman named Gretchen Clausing, who currently runs Philly Cam, which I'm affiliated with. Philly Cam is the Philadelphia Public Access Channel. But at the time, she was programming for the Prince Music Theater, and she invited me to do a monthly film series. And I jumped at it. I had a lot of deep knowledge on film from working at Video Library as a buyer, a used tape buyer. And so I knew, and I still know where all the bodies are buried. I know where certain movies are, and have a very, very deep knowledge of Black ephemera, let's call it that. But the first show we did was Claudine, and it was
I've seen that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it had never been made available on VHS. It was coming out on DVD. And so we did a premiere. We hosted a premiere. It was a free screening, and it was standing room only. We had almost 150 people. Like, there was sweat coming off the ceiling. There were so many people anxious to see this movie, and we got write-ups in the papers and stuff. And so we hit the ground running, and took it all the way up until 2019. We did monthly screenings basically every month, if not at least one screening, if not more, depending on what we're doing on average. So we showed a lot of movies, and then, stuff started happening where, we also got affiliated with Array, Ava DuVernay's company, and we were showcasing movies for them. And
How did you make that connection?
festivals. We were both screening work at the same time at various festivals. Ava DuVernay, she had a feature film that she made called I Will Follow, and she was having a tough time getting distribution. And she wanted in her heart to have national distribution for her work. So she asked herself, well, what constitutes a national distribution? It's having the film open the same time in multiple cities on the same day. So she had this idea, the African American Film Festival Releasing Movement, which would be a conglomeration of the most successful Black film festivals in the country, helping to release Black independent cinema, right? So when we started, it literally was that. We would all nominate films, and then we would take a vote, and we'd pick which ones would get showcased. Now, Ava had the deciding vote, of course, because we were using her resources and her talent as a publicist to help get the word out about these movies. But we did that. I did that for 5 years with her. Released 25 movies, I think. We were doing like 4 or 5 movies a year. So help with the distribution process on that. But then, Netflix happens. People don't want to come out. My audience is aging, and it's getting harder and harder to get people to come out. It was never really about the money, but the turnout was important, right? So it's one thing if you're entertaining, if you're working all month to get 100 people to show up, it's one thing. But to do that same amount of work and get 5 or 10 people, it's very disappointing. And then also the venues that we're looking at using, they had overhead issues as well. They weren't necessarily like when we first started, the venues wanted us because we were providing audience that didn't have access to. I had a mailing list of Black folks. If I sent an email out, I could literally get 100 people to show up at a movie screening the next day without any effort. In that intervening time, we're talking about 15 years, in that intervening time, they started setting up their own systems where they could do that themselves. And they had their own division. There are more Black films being made. They had their own division just to promote Black films. So I was not needed as much. And so the writing was on the wall. And so I folded it in the fall, like November of 2019. And then I just made a push to put more stuff like what we'd been doing locally, types of programming that I would do locally in a brick and mortar environment. I started to migrate that over to YouTube around that time. Now, March 2020, I'm sure everybody remembers, that's when COVID hit. So I completely avoided COVID in terms of like having the dilemma of how do we continue through this? It was never a question because I'd already quit it. I had already let go of the idea of doing live events prior to the pandemic. And so when COVID hit and George Floyd happened, in April or May of 2020, we had all these people all of a sudden interested in Black empowerment. And immediately they turned to Dick Gregory videos. Immediately they want to see, what did Malcolm X say? And they started realizing that as much as time has passed, very, very little has changed in terms of human and civil rights and Black identity in this country. And we had the inventory. So we went from 100,000 subscribers to 500,000 subscribers, and then we crossed 1 million subscribers, and then YouTube decides they wants to pull the plug on, monetizing the Reelblack channel.
Now, what was that about exactly? Like, what was YouTube's issue with what you guys were doing?
I was not aware of this. I mean, because the checks were coming. I thought I was doing a service, but other YouTubers have gone through this. It just took them a long time to catch up with me, but apparently it's part of their policy that you can't use reused content on your channel.
So it has to be all original content for them to pay.
They prefer that, yes. I mean, now there are lots of people that are still getting checks that have reused content on their channel, and I could have appealed it, and maybe for a few months more I would have gotten some payment out of them or whatever. But just for what it stands for, what the channel stands for, it is a curated experience. It is about Black empowerment and Black identity. I never did it with there was incentive. The money was an incentive to continue to do it, but that was never the reason why we did it. So
now, what kind of money does YouTube offer?
Well,
somebody
we
with
had
1 million subscribers.
I'm not a millionaire, but it was healthy enough for us to maintain and grow the channel. I'll put it that way. But I mean, it's pennies per view. But I mean, some of the videos continue to do really well, and YouTube continues to make money off those videos. I'm just boxed out of it. And then I had to start a backup channel, and we went from having 1 million subscribers on the main channel to right now we're a little over 10,000 subscribers on the backup channel. So it's just time to get on the couch again and write some scripts and do some bigger things. The heat is on, so to speak, but the legacy is still there. As we speak, people are learning and growing from the channel. I wouldn't change. There's some things I would change, but I wouldn't change the intention of what we were doing to try and get people to be smarter. It gave me great pride. I don't know about you, like, but the first thing or the second thing after brush my teeth, maybe I do is look at social media in the morning. And so much of social media geared to Black people is to sustain our ignorance. So I felt very good about getting up in the morning and digging through the crates to find these videos that I felt would help empower people. Now I know you have a question. You feel like some of the content might be
So
a
yeah,
little
yeah.
off, but
Now, yeah, Mike. Some might say like, wait a minute, Mike. Like all of this stuff is not conscious. Malcolm X, Huey P. Newton, Fannie Lou Hamer stuff you got here, man. You got some little bit of buffoonery, a little bit of blackface here and there, a little bit of Amos and Andy, So what
oh,
what is that about, Mike
well,
P?
it's about tricking the algorithm. Like you got to lead you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him think.
Mm.
So a lot of times we would have fun. We put up stuff. I took it down since, but like a Lil Wayne movie or like a hood flick or something like that. Just to trick the algorithm. Like, okay, so here's somebody, they finally get a chance to see this VHS tape that they lost 20 years ago is on YouTube now, and then they see the logo in the corner, and then they associate it with, oh, well, what else is on this channel? And then they discover Dick Gregory, then they discover Fannie Hamer, they discover Malcolm X. At least that's how I think about it. Maybe it is just straight ignorance. I mean, like people, the good thing and the bad thing about the algorithm is it directs people directly to what they want to see. So maybe I'm wrong, in assuming that the same audience that would want to see baller blocking would be interested in seeing the heritage of slavery. But I
Yeah.
take credit for both. The statute of limitations. We took that one down, baller blocking, but it's a good movie. It's a good movie.
Yeah, man. Very, very interesting, man. So what did you learn about the YouTube algorithm, man? I mean, even before to have 100,000 subscribers, man, for somebody who's trying to come up on YouTube, man, this is all that's spoken about. Oh, you got to hit the algorithm. You got to hit the algorithm. You got
I
to
don't
do
think there
this and
was
that
an
and third.
algorithm when we started. I think that's some new stuff. I mean, at first it was just putting stuff up that was based on what the public access channel was. So it was straight interviews with different filmmakers and musicians, people I was interested in. Now, the one thing I can say is, you know, we had lightning in a bottle with Dick Gregory because this is somebody who was very, very important to a lot of people and very wise, but he was not a mainstream character at all. Like, to get the information that Dick Gregory would share, you'd have to have a secret code, in a way. Like you'd have to know what talk radio stations he was available on. Shout out to brother Ron. We get mistaken a lot. Ron from We All Be TV. He has a great archive of Dick Gregory interviews as well. But I might have been the first, with my training, to like put him on a visual platform that was of quality, so to speak. We were shooting with digital video cameras, and eventually we moved it up to 4K and different things like that. But with the 6 hours of interviews we did with Dick Gregory, they continue to get a lot of views, and they continue to turn people on to just the fact that you are the universal power. I mean, that it's your birthright to live free, and helps to break a lot of mental chains and mental enslavement among our people. But the first time that we met Dick Gregory, was in New Hope, Pennsylvania. And it goes back to the first question you had, which was, I just wanted to talk to him about black film. And he had a whole nother agenda in place. And fortunately, we brought plenty of tape because, and he'd still be talking if we had tape, but he had to do a show that night. But he gave us like 3 hours of content, or hour and a half of content. And before that, I'd only done 10-minute interviews because it was meant to fit in context of a half-hour episode. So this goes back to the algorithm thing. There's another guy, most people who watch YouTube know Vlad TV. He got success by serializing his content. By like he'll do a long interview, like 2 hours, but then he'll break it up into chunks with different headings. And so the Dick Gregory interviews, they were the first time that I decided that I didn't want to edit what the man had to say. So I broke it up into chunks. And people were like, wow, did you hear what he just said? And just created a phenomenon where people were like, I'll subscribe now. I wasn't asking people to even subscribe. I was just like, all right, well, tune in next week at, Wednesday at 8, we'll put another clip up, So I guess that's how you trick the algorithm. And a lot of people have a lot of success just by basically standing in front of a wall and saying the same thing over and over again. They can build an audience just built on their own personal charisma and their own opinion or their willingness to say certain things. I tend to be neutral, and you caught me earlier. My passion is representation of justice in these films. But generally, I'll hear you out before I make a statement. So I'm not necessarily the kind of person that can build audience just by standing in front of a wall and talking. I don't have hair anymore. I can't give out hair tips or makeup tips or anything like that. So
Yeah,
so
I think that is special, though, man. Because in this age, it's like people. I hear a lot of people say, "Well, people don't want good information." I even ask my students, I'm like, how do you think YouTube channels grow? Like, some of you guys have like thousands of subscribers. They're like, you just gotta do silly stuff,
Yeah, well, don't get me wrong.
Like,
I'm very grateful that we have any subscribers on the second channel. I just the injustice is that we've got, let's say there's 4,000 videos on the channel, and let's say 2,000 of them are original content. It would take me, if I was able to re-upload all the original content to the other channel, if I did like 1 or 2 a day, it'd take me 2 years to get those videos over. And in the meantime, YouTube's still making money off that stuff, So that's where I get frustrated, But I'm very grateful that we have a platform. I'm grateful for anybody that watches the channel. I'm appreciative for the doors that the channel has opened in my life, and I invite more opportunities to chronicle and build a catalog of content that speaks to the legacy of our people, Black people, Black entertainment figures, so on and so forth. So I don't take any of it lightly, but the algorithm is weird because it's like, okay, everybody's like, it's sort of like, it's kind of like Chris after he left Saturday Night Live. It's sort of like, it's one of those feelings I have. Like, it's like, okay, you got 1 million subscribers, but I can't reach more than 100 people at a time when I go live, and that's just strange to me. It can't be that much apathy in the world. It's just the algorithm. It's like, so, I didn't beg people to hit the subscribe button, so I'm not saying that everybody is getting notified when I go live, but literally, when I play music in the morning, we have a nice club and I enjoy doing it. But when we hit over 100 people, that's a big deal. I mean, you got 1 million subscribers, you can't get 100 people together to talk, so either there's something fishy about that. And I don't understand what it is, but it certainly hurts my ability to grow Reelblack 2, because I can't just go on and say, go over to Reelblack 2 if you want to see this, because then it'll be the same 50 people going over to see it. You know?
Yeah, I think people have an issue with the live stuff sometimes because they feel like they have to be tuned in at that moment in time. It's kind of like, TV, like,
I'm
you tune in
but
at 8 o'clock
but
to watch so and
but
so. Like, people don't like doing
out
that.
of a million people to get 50,
Yeah,
that's there's something. It doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. You know, and to out of a million people to have 1,000 people looking at your stuff, it just doesn't add up. I mean, so that's all I can say on it, because I don't I'm not privy to how that works, but it's you know it's part of the story. There's the rise
yeah,
and the
yeah.
fall, and I've seen it happen with lots of other people. So I'm game for it. And as Baba Dick would say, it's all a game. So
Yeah, yeah.
just get ready, folks. you know
It's
Version
interesting. I've heard on
2.0, it's gonna be killer.
I've heard people on about social media say that even if you have a whole lot of subscribers, sometimes when you promote stuff, it won't reach all of them unless you pay for it or whatever it is. Like they're not going to send everything to all the people that follow you, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I've heard about that,
Yeah, well, that's definitely
which is
true. And
interesting.
then the component part of that also is, if you make content for free, you can't suddenly expect people to start paying for stuff that they've been getting for free before. So we have a Patreon, we have Cash App and PayPal and stuff like that. We ask for donations, but it's just on the strength. It's not necessarily funding the ability to move all of that content over to another platform. We're kind of stuck, and I don't mind it, because it's reached, Jawanza Kunjufu, brilliant man whose name you brought up. I mean, his videos have millions of views, and you know, he's been on the show. I'm grateful to be the conduit for a lot of this information. So
Yes, sir.
so
Yes,
but yeah,
sir.
I mean, it's unless you own the sand and the sandbox, you got to play by their rules. So it is
Facts.
what it
Yeah,
is.
man. Yeah, just going back into film and some of your films and things on Real Black. I know you've been studying film for decades and decades and decades. All the camera angles, all the fancy terminology and techniques and things like that. Generally, I feel like sometimes the average person will watch film for entertainment, and then people that are into film will watch film for everything else. So, what do you exactly watch film for? And then what advice would you have for people that do watch film randomly and don't know what's going on, to kind of take a peek at, like, so they
Okay.
might be a little more aware next time they're looking at a movie or a show or something like that.
Well, I'll say, don't watch any Charles Woods videos if you want to enjoy movies just for the sake of entertainment value. Um, Charles Woods is my podcast partner in crime, and he's the author of the soon to be released book Tricknology. God willing, we'll see. He's been working on this book forever, but we always say the soon to be released. And he turned me on to just how insidious American film is when it relates to Black people. I couldn't enjoy myself if I looked through that prism at all times. You just have to. It's sort of like dealing with racism. It's like you just have to know it exists. It's just a component of racism, and you can choose to deal with it. You have to pick your spots. You have to pick your moments when you want to deal with it, when you don't want to deal with it. That being said, I'm not a Marvel person. I'm not mainstream movie person. I don't know if I ever was. I always looked for movies that were a little bit different. than what the mainstream was listening to. I'm not a follower of the crowd, so to speak. My taste always varies. So if you're into Stevie Wonder, then I'm like, do you know about Sarita Wright? And I think that comes across in some of the stuff that we program on the channel. Like, I'm always trying to turn people on to something that's a little left of center, and also the kind of movies that I chose to make is about finding the stories worth telling. It's about, okay, well, if everybody else is wanting to do Will Smith, and if they want to talk about Philly hip hop, they want to talk about Will Smith, I'm interested in MC Breeze. Um, the guy who's got just as equally an interesting story, but the mainstream isn't necessarily going out of their way to tell that story. So what I look for in movies, just the same thing most people do to be entertained, but I'm not entertained by what most people are entertained by. Like, I literally fall asleep during Fast and Furious movies. Like, they're just so loud that they literally put me to sleep. I did the first Black Panther. We were supposed to go watch the second one and do a podcast, but neither Charles or I have felt a huge desire to revisit it. Because we kind of know what it's about. So my taste is not mainstream, but it's pro-Black. And like I said, before we close up shop, I went to see everything, and I told everybody, go see it, support it. I mean, Black film really needed commercial support. The only way to gauge a success of a film for a long time was how well it did at the box office. Now that's less of a factor. It's more how much you tweet about something, it seems. So, I'm not retired, but I'm just exhausted from the amount of content that's out there. So I've kind of taken a little break from watching anything and just focusing on trying to get my own stuff together. But I mean, what kind of stuff are you digging? What should be on my radar?
On your radar. I think we have very similar tastes, actually. It's funny you say that. I haven't seen Black Panther 2 yet either. And every time I see the trailer, I'm like, it just doesn't really captivate my interest like that. And I was very up and down about the first one in the first place. I really liked, I'm forgetting the name of the Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali.
Oh, the One Night in Miami, or a different one?
The One Night in
Okay,
Miami. I really
the
like that
actors
one.
were good in that. Yes.
Recently saw Till.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like into those historical accurate type of movies like that.
Well, shout out to
And those
Chinoy
movies.
Chuku, Philly resident at one point, former Philly resident. She did a great job with Till. She's really talented.
Yeah, movies that kind of make you think. And I really like documentaries too. I'm really into documentaries. But yeah, unless I'm watching a movie, like a new movie for educational purposes, like there's one interview that you mentioned that a lot of movies now, it's like they won't even stand the test of time. Like, other movies like I think you mentioned Coming to America, and you said that that's a movie that you can watch over and over and over again. And it just seems like movies now are almost trying to hit the algorithm, hit it in stride, like whatever people are interested in at that
Yeah,
moment.
well, I
But
think they're making them too
in
fast. I mean, there's just such, Netflix created and streaming, it was inevitable, but it created such a demand for content that I don't think the amount of time is going into developing projects the same way that they were in the past. And a lot of stuff just is getting made just to be time passers and not made to stand the test of time. So yeah, I agree with that. But then again, I'm not in the age group that watches stuff, and then the nature of the way people watch things now also is very, very quick fixes. So that's why TikTok is so popular, and Instagram, and just it's killing our attention spans. But But the way people look at stuff is in memes. I mean, one of the worst movies ever made, and I'll say it to Nick Cannon's face, is School Dance. Horrible film. Oh, you've seen clips of it because they took scenes from it, and it's all over YouTube. Cat Williams is in it, and Kevin Hart's in it. So Nick, in a certain way, he was a genius in the sense that he's like, well, I don't have to make a great movie that holds up. As long as people take their favorite scenes and put it on YouTube, um, it's got millions and millions of views. But so it all starts off with motive and intention. Like what's your motive? What's your intention behind doing this stuff? And I'm not one that believes in being a broke, starving artist. I think there's tons of money out there for movies and content, but that should not be the reason why you want to make a movie. And it certainly should not be the reason why you want to have your name on a movie, is just to make money. So,
right now, when it comes to like Black film, like lack of representation has always been an issue, that we always talking about. Academy Awards was an issue with, Black folks not getting recognized for awards and things of that sort. And even the awards that I've noticed that they recognize, like you have the first Black woman to get an Academy Award for her role in Birth of a Nation. She was a mammy.
Well, it's Gone with the Wind, Hattie McDaniel.
Yeah. Hattie McDaniel. So Gone with the Wind. I'm sorry, not Birth of a Nation. Thanks for that correction. So she was, a mammy, and Precious Monique, the great Monique, won an award for Precious, which I thought was an interesting role to win an award for.
Well, she put her heart and soul into it. But yeah, I mean, we typically, it's not Top Gun Maverick, that we get nominated for. It's some other stuff. Yeah.
So what do you think is behind a lot of Black movies that do get awarded and recognized? They're a specific kind of caliber of Black movie, even Training Day, things like that are the ones that captivate people's attention, and not the other thinker type of movies and things that we've discussed.
Like A Great Debaters or Kill and the Bee. Those are movies that are certainly Oscar caliber. They didn't get any nominations. Denzel gets the win for playing a villain. One could argue that conflict is needed to tell a good story, and by Denzel breaking type and playing a villain, he showed a different aspect of his range. But then at the same time, you could argue he should have won an Oscar many, many times over, for Malcolm X or something else. So there is a complete double standard when it comes to what we get rewarded for when it comes to the Academy Awards, the Golden Globes, so on and so forth. I think it's really important to look at the nature of who votes for those awards. It's not us, until recently, it was 99% old white men, and, so hence the HELP wins, hence Green Card wins, or Green Book.
That wasn't even about the Green Book. I saw that one. Yeah. I'm like, what?
So that's what they're comfortable seeing. One of the things that Charles and I discuss quite often is how Black identity largely exists within the white imagination, and it's what, we have, a lot of our energy is spent trying to make white people comfortable if we want to get into certain spaces. Now, obviously there are certain people in the culture that challenge that, but at a certain point, you can see very clearly where lines are drawn, especially if you're getting corporate money. You got to deal with mainstream acceptance. You can see where the lines are drawn. It's where people get their money cut off by being outspoken or saying certain things or whatever.
Now, at the same time, you have like some of the the movies, if you look at the greatest, the best movies of all time, you have, The Birth of a Nation, which is an interesting movie to be like classified still as one of the greatest movies of all
Well, it's
time and
historic and
debated.
groundbreaking for its time. Yeah. I mean, should we still be studying it without scrutiny? No. Should you be aware of what it is? I think it's very important because it speaks to the whole nature of what this country is about. I haven't watched it all the way through, but I'm familiar with the film enough.
Yeah. Do you put something like Amos and Andy in that same type of context? Because
Well, I think it should be
Amos,
reevaluated. I mean, one of the things I would love is to see it properly restored and made available. I don't necessarily feel that Amos and Andy on television holds the type of stigma that it was accused of back in the 60s by the NAACP. I think it should be reevaluated and made available for people to make their own assessment. And the beauty of YouTube, that we can have an Amos and Andy episodes, and people can watch them and see for themselves. We can have a Malcolm X speaking, and people can watch it and assess for themselves. They don't have to buy into the conventional narrative of Malcolm X was some sort of villain. They can listen and judge for themselves. And I think if we're in a free country, a lot of stuff that's not available should be made more available. And that's
just for some context with the Amos and Andy, like some people might not be familiar with this show. So Amos and Andy started off as a radio show, and it was pretty much white men acting as black, and introducing, I guess, what their idea of blackness was to a white audience, and then it became a show that the NAACP eventually had an issue with, and things like that, where white men were portraying themselves as black men. So how do we look at things like that? Because I was looking at some of your comments on some of the Amos and Andy videos, and some people are like, oh man, I remember that. Those were the days. That's great. Like, and other people were like, this is terrible. This bothers me, and this and that and the third. Like,
I
how do you look
I
at
haven't
stuff
seen
like
that
that?
many negative comments. People watch what they want to see. And they comment. It's like a Yelp review. People really have to be super duper offended to say something negative on a YouTube comment. So I'm not necessarily privy to the negative comments on those Amos and Andy videos that are on the channel. But what I can say is, yeah, in the 60s, it made perfect sense. If television was not making new shows that reflected the new attitude that black people had about themselves, I can understand why Bill Cosby and NAACP would want Amos and Andy taken off of reruns at that time. Since then, we've had waves and waves of television programming geared towards black people that reflect the black experience, so on and so forth. And I think Amos and Andy falls nicely within that history and that legacy. And I think it should be looked upon as a historic, the same way people look at I Love Lucy or The Honeymooners. I think people should have access to clean, pristine, quality episodes of Amos and Andy.
Gotcha. You also have a few documentaries on your channel. One of the ones I really like is How to Sell to Black People.
Oh, The Secret to Selling the Negro. Yes.
Yeah.
That
That's
has a lot
the
of views.
title of it.
That's a classic. Well, what about? I mean, it's interesting because it's one of the few color films that depicts black middle class life from the 1950s, and I think that's what I like about it. That we get to see
Yeah,
ourselves in full color.
I might actually play a couple clips on our audio version of this of that film, because I thought it was really interesting to get live take on exactly, well, the Negro now has a lot of money now,
Yeah.
and they're spending their money, and like
Well,
that type of lingo, and well, they like to drive fancy cars and do
well,
fancy
yeah,
things
so
now, just like we all do,
like
and
it has its own home, that kind of crap. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not holding Johnson Publications accountable to any of that stuff, but it is interesting. Well, you look at a lot of ephemeral films, training films, different films that were not meant to be seen by the general public, and they have a sort of a camp value to them. And The Secret to Selling the Negro is a marketing film that was made by Johnson Publications, the people that publish Ebony and Jet magazine, to try to entice white businesses to buy ads in their magazines and publications. So and it's you must see it. It's something to be seen. It's got millions of views on YouTube, and again, I'm happy to be the conduit to that film, and that should be
what I find
preserved
in
too, as well.
absolutely, absolutely. The what I find fascinating about it is a lot of it is very true. So I'm looking at it like some of the psychology behind the things that we buy and all the
Right.
stuff,
We
and
need to have we
it's
demand brand names and different things like that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you look around today, you're like, okay, like they kind of got us to a T.
But the
Like,
secret to the
it's
success of that movie is, it kind of hits you from out of the blue, and you're like, well, wait, well, first off, the name Negro is a dated
mm-hmm,
term, right? So
absolutely.
that automatically attracts people's. It sounds funny to a lot of people, the Negro, and then it's, they're talking about us, and then the narrator, he may or may not be black. You can't tell his race. So then you're thinking, well, wait, white people are really trying to play us, aren't they? And then you look at the credits, it's like, oh no, this was a black made film. If you talk about what a
Interesting,
black
yeah.
film is, this is as black as it's going to get. It's just, Ebony magazine and Jet magazine always appealed to the middle class, aspiring culture of black identity. It is not trying to be the source. Not to say that the source doesn't deserve. I would love to see a source documentary about trying to sell ads to Source magazine. I wonder if they made one of those. The secret to selling to the source, something like that. But not to disparage anybody, but it's definitely a product of its time. And there are a couple of things like that. There's another one on the channel called the Budweiser Express or something. But Budweiser Malt Liquor Express is another movie that you weren't supposed to see, talking about how they're going to sell malt liquor to the masses in 1972. And it's got like Carol Speed and things like that. We're going to dig those out in the summer and show them here in
Oh
Philadelphia.
man, I want to see that. I want to see that.
Yeah, it'll be a
Definitely.
fun night. It'll be a fun night to show those kind of things. So
Let me know about that one, man. I might come to Philly for that one.
June 22nd at Scribe Video Center.
June 22nd.
2023. Okay. Put it that way.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, some people might look at just the black movies and film from the 60s, 70s to today. And it's like, well, improvement has been made. Black people are getting better roles and things like that. But you still find filmmakers, actresses, actors, and people within the Hollywood space still complaining about how they're treated and things of that sort and their roles and everything. So who do you think is responsible? Do you think the people that are producing the movies are responsible? The actors and actresses, should they be more selective over the roles that they play? Do they got to eat? Or is it the industry themselves? Like, who you think is responsible for us still not being viewed in the light that we should be viewed in at this point in time?
Well, I mean, are we or are we not? I hear the complaints, of course, like everybody else, when there's injustice, but it seems like we're in a better place than ever as far as opportunities that exist for black talent to exist. I love what people like LeBron James are doing. They're bringing a whole black-led management team to making content, and making shows that are not disrespectful to the culture of black identity. So I think there are people that are doing it. John Legend with the Get Lifted film company. I mean, I like what him and Mike Jackson are doing. I think that there are some entities that get it, that understand. I mean, you talk about Will Power Packer I don't think he's ever had a movie not open at number one since he started, damn near. You know, can it be better? Yes, absolutely. But who's responsible? I'll fall back on what Bill Duke says. He says the whole entertainment industry is a big pimp and hoe game. So as long as you understand that, then you understand what gets made and how it gets made. Nobody's in the business to lose money. And unfortunately, over time, Black identity has shifted into a cultural, I'll use a big word, miasma. And it's left a lot of younger people not understanding the level of greatness that we come from and that we've had to exhibit in order just to exist on the map. A lot of people think that it's easy to do this stuff. And in a way, they set themselves up by just constantly serving the lowest common denominator. Now, that's not to say that everybody has to be great or that I expect everybody to aspire to greatness. I'm just saying we all stand on certain people's shoulders, and those people, despite conventional narratives, super intelligent, super resilient, super resourceful, and we're all benefiting as a result off those shoulders. If you're talking about white folks and whose game it is, to get anything through requires a certain level of compromise. And maybe it's unreasonable for me, as a relative outsider, somebody who declares themselves to be an independent filmmaker, to be overly critical of people that are just, like you said, trying to feed their families. I want entertainment to go back to what we said earlier. I want entertainment to exist that people can go back to and say is classic. And up until now, there haven't been that many opportunities to develop that because shows get canceled after one season. Like Martin is considered a classic show because it ran for 5 years. It had a chance to be a great show. But there's lots of other shows that might have been equally interesting or good, but they weren't given the opportunity. They weren't on a Fox, a burgeoning network. Like In Living Color was, like you have to look at these windows of opportunities that happen. So like Martin, had it been on ABC, it wouldn't have lasted 5 episodes. The fact of the matter is Fox was looking to develop a new audience, and they were eating off of Black people. So he's able to not only make his show but have a certain amount of creative freedom. The same thing with Everybody Hates Chris. They're about to do an animated series on that. That show doesn't go 4.5 seasons if not for the fact that it was on a burgeoning network, the CW or whatever, UPN, whichever one it was, UPN or CW. And now we're seeing a lot more Black entertainment being created because there's an infinite number of outlets that need and require the monster to be fed. That doesn't mean give it garbage, So for me, the fight isn't about placing blame on who's responsible for the lack of. It's really about challenging people. Can we get another draft of this done before you go to shoot it? Can you get the same thing Chris Rock mentioned in the Oscar speech? If you don't have the right actors, maybe don't make the movie. Just strive to make it as good as you can so that it has repeat value. But I don't necessarily want to answer a loaded question like and assign blame to it. It's not. I said as much earlier. If it's not your it's not your sandbox. You got to play by their rules. And a lot of people that are getting success have learned to play by those rules. And then also there are a lot of people that have gotten power outside of the industry and managed to leverage it into new power within the entertainment industry within film and television, like a 50 Cent or the Wu-Tang Clan with their series, or I'll try to give you a third one, Queen Latifah with The Equalizer. You know, these are people that built their brand up. 50 Cent with Power, you know, built their brand up outside of the industry, and they can't be denied when they go to make film. They have a built-in audience for themselves. So
Got it. All right, before we close out,
sure.
I want to get into a quick activity here called "What's your favorite?"
I don't know if I
Pick
can deal
your
with this. I
film
mean, I don't know if I have a favorite, but go ahead.
favorites.
Try.
Pick your film brand a little bit. What are some of your favorite documentary films?
Ooh, good one. Favorite documentaries. I like When We Were Kings and Soul Power. Those are on the Criterion label. I like Watt Stacks as a concert film. It speaks a lot to the 70s. I like things from the 70s. I don't like to go too far back when it comes to documentaries dealing with Black people, because then we're dealing with the injustice and civil rights issues. I like Marlon Riggs' work, Color Adjustment, and Ethnic Notions, which is another thing that Criterion has chosen. I love the work of William Greaves. You know, he was a pioneer filmmaker, passed away maybe 10 years ago, but he left a huge body of work that reflected Black culture, Pan-African culture, and Black middle-class culture. So, and then I like the work of mainstream people. I like Michael Moore. I like what Jonathan Demme did in documentary. I love what Spike Lee has done in documentary. Four Little Girls, one of the best movies ever made, as far as documentary films go. You know, definitely one of Spike's best. You know, I'll put it next to Do the Right Thing and Malcolm X. So
I don't know if I've seen Four Little Girls.
it's about the church bombing.
Yeah, I got some homework. Give me some homework.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite films that touch on, well, you already kind of talked about films that touch on Black history. What about favorite Black movies or films ever?
Nothing But a Man.
Seen that?
I
That
like
was a good one.
Coolie High, Trading Places, Coming to America. Those are things I can go back and revisit anytime. I feel like they're classics. There's not much that tops Nothing But a Man in my book. I mean, it's a story about Black love.
That's a classic.
For those who don't know, Abby Lincoln and Ivan Dixon, you know, play mature lovers. You know, they're grown people. You know, and they're trying to make a way for themselves in the South in the '60s. You know, with a lot of racial prejudice coming on about them. You know, and then I like goofy stuff. You know, like Rudy Ray Moore movies too. You know, Human Tornado. I can look at. You know, I mean, not to say it's my favorite or the greatest, but you know, that's where my taste goes. It goes in both directions.
Gotcha. All right. Favorite videos on your channel?
Ooh, I should prepare for this. I just coming to mind. I like the Muhammad Ali Wake Up and Apologize. I like everything that I've ever done where I get to talk to people. People really enjoy the Patrice O'Neal clip, you know, where he's backstage with Kevin Hart. You know, I like different conversations I had with Spike Lee over the years. Trying to find some female centric stuff. The Monique interview, you said you watched that. You know, she kind
That
of
kind of made me laugh.
she ripped me a new one, but she rips everybody a new one. You know, I had to take a blow for the team, but
I felt bad for you, man. I
she's
felt
very
bad, man.
candid in that interview. Yeah, you know, and you got to respect the queen. So, and Lunell, I love Lunell. Whenever she's on the channel, she's a tough cookie too. She doesn't suffer many fools. You have to really be on your A game when you talk to Lunell, but she always gives you a little more than you expect. I like the Robert Zemeckis interview that we did. That was Forrest Gump is a great film, and he's done Back to the Future and all that stuff. So have the opportunity to talk to somebody of that caliber. I mean, he's like next to Spielberg, So to get that opportunity, the ones I haven't done yet, still want to talk to Knight at some point. Still want to sit down longer with Spike. Still want to sit down longer with Chris Rock. But right now it's about incentive. If we can't deliver the numbers, then it's more for private conversations than putting it out there on YouTube. But the channel's still there. I'm just not posting as often as I used to. But it's not going anywhere. It's there for posterity, and I still answer all my emails, and we're not really going anywhere. But it's just as the nature of YouTube has changed, the nature where I direct my energy has shifted. So for those who are curious,
you also got a funny video on there with Tribe Called Quest member doing a little dance. Gentleman that just passed.
Okay, well maybe we do. I mean, it's one of the Jive's greatest hits videos or something like that.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Fife is on there. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is never going to come back out. It's on the channel, So it comes from old VHS tapes, that come from the collection, the archive, and as long as it's music related, nobody seems to have a problem with it because the money gets directed to the music publishers. Doesn't go into. Never went into my pocket. It always went to the music publishers. So they have that worked out. But they should work out a few more things so that more people that were involved with the creative process of making the content get enumerated, properly. But
yeah, I mean, you've worked with quite a number of people in the industry that you've mentioned. What have been some of your favorite, collaborations that you've done?
In
working
life,
with some of
giving people their flowers when they're still here. You can't take anything for granted. Nothing's promised to anybody. But having the opportunity to spend time with Melvin Van Peebles in his later years was a blessing. He became a good friend. Giving Billy Paul a tribute from the city after screening the documentary that they did about him, having the premiere of his documentary here in Philadelphia. That's a very memorable night. Working with Ava DuVernay, going to Sundance for the first time as part of the Array crew. That's a very memorable experience. I always say that you never know where you're going to end up if you have a camera in your hand. I feel very blessed and fortunate and grateful. It's sort of like that movie City of God, when the gangsters are all untouchable and then they see the kid with the camera and it's like, oh, come on in, take our picture, and they pose and they smile. And, there's nothing like having a camera, knowing how to use it. I mean, Jasmine Sullivan, the very first night that she performed at Black Lily, we captured that. I've been blessed to be a part of so many moments in time that if not for me or my partners, Daryl DeBrest or Craig Carpenter, somebody, if we weren't there, it would have been a forgotten moment. Amy Winehouse performing with Questlove at the Black Lily Film and Music Festival. That footage has gotten a lot of views on YouTube, but if we weren't there to film it, it would just been somebody's memory in the back of their mind. Remember when? So we get, because we had the cameras, we get to tell the story and share it. So that's the best part of the job by far. Being able to share those stories.
Right, last one. Your favorite life gem that you've learned from a movie or a film?
No. Well, give me an example. Like, well, like there's no crying in baseball. Where are we going with it? You know,
Um,
and just
let's
click
see
your hairless
here.
3 times. It's like, you know, I don't know.
Trying to think.
I just have to. It's a game. That's what Dick Gregory taught me. As long as you don't take things too serious and you realize who the real power is, what the real power is, and you respect that, then things ultimately will go your way. Um, I it's a game. You know, and it's whether you want to play it or not. I guess is the other aspect of that. Do you want to play the game or not?
Hmm.
But yeah, so it's like I don't take things too serious. I mean, I try not to at least. Like Richard Pryor, one of my heroes. After he burned himself in the fire, he began to question life and what life was about. And he came to the conclusion that it's one big cosmic joke. So ultimately, you know, 10 years from now, what does this conversation mean? Hopefully, it'll inspire people. 20 years from now, 30 years from now, but 1,000 years from now, it's likely to be forgotten. And there's so many people that our job is to try to fuse with immortality, the ability that we have to tell our own stories, to record ourselves, should lead to a layer or a level of immortality. But instead, we're filming our cats. We're being entertained by cat videos. Instead, we're filming ourselves fighting, and we're doing damage to our psyches by watching that stuff over and over again. So for me, it's about how do you do just small little things, like just having this conversation we had today, to just try to put a little positivity into the world where people at least feel they have an option. And I think if that's what the channel does, then I'm doing my job. Just provide the antidote. It's like, okay, there's poison everywhere, but there's one little spot, called Reelblack TV on YouTube, where you can find the antidote.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that, man. So with that, with Reelblack TV, all the work that you've done, the work that you're continuing, what is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
That we matter, that Black people matter. I should wear the other hat, the Black Film Matters hat. But I mean, there's just too much. There's too much information going against us on a constant, continual basis, and it's by design. Capitalism doesn't want you to think that you're anything. And if you happen to be Black and you exist in this capitalistic society, they need you to be on the bottom rung at all times. And what I hope is that when people watch a video and they see that little logo in the corner, the Reelblack logo in the corner, that it's helping them feel more positive about their existence. That's my greatest hope. And at the very least, that they got entertained for the amount of time that it took for them to enjoy it or devour it. That they didn't just click past it. So that would be legacy for me. Just that those videos travel. And I know, the Dick Gregory videos have certainly influenced a lot of people. I get letters all the time. Thank you for doing that. So I just say I'm the conduit for it. I can't take any credit for the generosity of that man, what he did with his life. More people should do or feel empowered to do. Once they know his story. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely, man. And thank you for just captivating a lot of moments, man. Like you mentioned, within Black history, within some of these people that we generally don't know that personal side of, like Chris Rock and some of the people that you've been around. So you're doing it,
I appreciate you
on
taking
your
the
own
time
too.
to chat. I mean, it's a very underground thing. It's like I never sought the attention, and therefore I never got it. But I know the work reaches people. And I don't know I can't fathom what a million people look like, but I know it's reached millions of people, the work that I've done. And for that, I'm super duper grateful. And, for the last 20 years, I've never had to have a day job. I've made all my coin making and doing what I love to do. So I'm grateful for that, but that was a decision that I made, that I wasn't going to go backwards, so it's about moving forward. So I appreciate the time. It's a very good conversation. I enjoyed spending time with you. So
Yes,
thank you,
sir.
Mr. G.
Likewise, man. Likewise. If you could do us one more thing and leave us with your favorite quote and what it means to you.
My favorite quote: "Where are the white women at?" I don't know. I don't know what from Blazing
What
Saddles. I don't know. You put me on the spot, man. Um, I didn't see that one coming. And it's deep too, by Richard
Give me a Dick
Pryor.
Gregory quote.
Richard Pryor, and it's deep too.
Richard Pryor. Okay.
Yeah, something funny. They're spinning. Chris Rock, but check out Chris's special if you haven't already. By the time you hear this, I mean, he's got some deep things to say about the nature of social media and our desire to get attention for the wrong reasons. I think it's very insightful, and should be paid attention to.
All right. For those that want to know how to get to Reelblack and your Instagram, your YouTube, and
So
stuff like that, how can they find you?
everything, good, bad, or ugly, if you put in Reelblack, ReelBlack, on the internet, you'll find me on. I even have a TikTok. Somebody convinced me to do that. So TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube is all Reelblack. On YouTube, it's Reelblack 1 and Reelblack 2. So you want to subscribe to both channels. And the best way, if you want to reach me, if you like this, if you didn't like it, long-winded, didn't talk enough, whatever, DM me on Instagram. I check that fairly frequently. So
Indeed.
follow me on Instagram. That's the best way to reach me.
Mike D, thank you so much, man, for chopping it up with us, man, and giving us some candid honesty. Appreciate that. Listeners, please support Reelblack and the work that they're doing. Subscribe to the channel. Check out some Black history. Check out some comic relief and all that good stuff that's on there. And of course, remember, your mind is the most powerful tool in the universe. Therefore, if you can think it, you can do it. If you believe in it, you can be it. And if you fight for it, you can have it. The world is yours. This has been your host, Mr. G, and I will see you next time on MasterMine.
So every day I'm going hard. I'm talking business, bank accounts, and credit cards. And somehow we defeat the odds and making sure that no one's starved illegal. All you had to